Welcome back to Tabula Rasa. This is our comic book review. Based off of these 5 categories, I'm going to give it either a star, or if I really like it, a star plus. A combination of 5 stars or pluses means I recommend it. More than 5 just simply tells you how much I like the book. Do the YouTube thing, feed the algorithm, and here we go. So we are looking at the Vampirella Archive series. Writers are various people, artists are various people. I say it this way because it is a compilation of all the writers and artists for this first volume. This was originally published in 1969. Now it's published by Dynamite Entertainment, who holds the license for it. Now, not a simple view of TNA. Vampirella was originally published during a time in which comic books were highly self-censored, as comic books had to be submitted to the Comics Code Authority in order for it to be suitable for distribution. One has to ask, how did such a scandalous and sexy and horror-filled comics get published during this time? After all, they were explicitly, targeted for that sort of thing. Well, 1, it was published in a magazine, therefore not a comic book, and 2, the Comics Code Authority, the submissions were voluntary. The only catch was that if you didn't get the approval, it didn't get distributed. But then again, back to the first point, it was a magazine, not a comic book, so it got around that. Hooray! So, how does it stack up? Black and white / color. This is a black and white comic, and even though it technically isn't a modern comic, we can see the staples of modern comics, at least comics at the time of this recording, in these great black and white illustrations. In some sense, we can see that it was around this era in which the styles between American comic books and Japanese manga were beginning to separate. It shows the main use of ink, black inks, along with all the techniques that comes with it, from cross-hatching and brushwork and how you set everything up. Basically, it seemed that they were trying to use as few tools as possible to keep it, going and make it quick. And this is kind of different from what we get in Japan, which ended up using screen tones and whiteout inks, and it eventually turned manga into more of a mixed medium application instead of, just on a single page. And the variations in the styles, I have to say, gives us a very solid star plus. After all, more is better. Panels and expression. Now, if only modern day comics played with the panels as much as we see here, it would be for the best. And did this have that play? It almost seemed experimental, like they didn't really get the style down, but they knew this is what they did in the past. And so there was a lot of experimentation, and it made it very neat. We can see different styles from the different writers and artists, and all over. I have to say, I did enjoy this. So, yes, this gets a star plus. Character and dialogue. This is more of an anthology series of various short stories in the comic book form. So, character development or dialogue isn't really the focus. But what we do see is functional for the story, and that's all we need. Nothing's really groundbreaking. Like I said, there is a lot of play with the panels and the art, but not so much with the characters and the dialogue. You have your tropes, and they play into them. Sometimes they subvert them a little bit, but it is great because we always get new stories, new characters, more like stock characters than anything. But it's just nice to see that plain fun and just trying to see, oh, what's going to come next. So this definitely gets a solid star. Now, short stories are great and all, but, I prefer the more narrative, long-term kind of things. So, but either way, solid star. Themes and execution. Now, these being basically short stories in the comic book form, there isn't much to focus on themes besides what's normal within the genre that they're telling, which is mostly, in this case, science fiction and horror and a mix between the two, right? A little bit fantasy as well, and it does play to these horror, sci-fi, fantasy tropes within the genre. And so if you're familiar with them, you're like, okay, got this, let's move on. And considering how short it is, you don't need to be too invested. And it's just interesting to see how the artists and the writers just play within this genre. So for that, again, I am giving this a solid star. Plot and execution. Again, short stories, so not too much in terms of plot, but again, within this medium of short stories plus comic books, it is functional and fun to see where the creatives took it. They weren't too complicated, but it didn't need to be. After all, each writer slash artist only had so many pages to tell their stories, so it had to be somewhat straightforward. And within that, you know, you give credit to where credit is due. This deserves a solid star. Again, it almost seems that they know their medium pretty well. They know that they only have a certain amount of time, so it's best to play within tropes, and that's what this does best. So, again, giving this a solid star. Conclusion. So 5 stars, 2 pluses. That makes it definitely something to recommend. Now, mind you, I really enjoyed the art more than the stories, but that doesn't mean the stories were bad. They were supposed to be this short form, so there was no sense of continuity that needed to be required, minus the Vampirella stories that we get, and even then it was very, very loose. There are currently 15 volumes of these archive stories, and it may be worth perusing during this Halloween season. And each volume is around like 400 some pages, so it's like, wow, that is a lot. And in some ways, I find that to be a great view in what these people thought during this time in terms of stories and art, especially within the sci-fi horror genres. In many ways, these comics seem very modern. The play in panels and in the variation in the stories is something we don't really see too much in modern comics today, or at least at the time of this recording, especially from the big two like Marvel and DC. It could be that these comics were made to skirt the comic code's authority, and therefore it gives that edge to it, things that you normally won't see, right? And it doesn't do the edginess for edge sake. No out of nowhere bombs, no left field moments that are undeserved, right? No jumping the shark for publicity stunts for this, right? It has these horror tropes, these sci-fi tropes, and it just goes with it. And you do sometimes get a circumvention of expectations at the end, but it's all according to the story, not for anything extra, right? Overall, I think this is a great piece of history to look into, and it becomes even more fascinating when you find out that little things like the costume of Vampirella was designed by Trina Robbins, a feminist comic book artist and a historian of comics, which goes to show you that feminism or feminist interpretations of Vampirella can be not so simple as it can't be as simple as she dresses skimpy, therefore patriarchy, and that equals bad. No, it's complicated, and I enjoy that. Although at the time of this recording, it seems to be more in the reverse nowadays for comics. Comic books tend to announce things not in service of the story, but rather to take advantage of the clickbait culture that has been cultivated through various social media sites like Twitter, Facebook, you know, Tumblr, and whatnot, you know, Reddit, and other websites such as BuzzFeed.com or comicbook.org, Mary Sue, etc. The clickbait title. So and so is gay. This person is bi. Why aren't there enough females in the industry? Where is the diversity? Instead of focusing on the story, where nowadays it's pretty much any topic is open for publication. And it is but instead of focusing on stories, it's now just trying to stick to some sort of algorithm, check the boxes, and it's automatically considered good by the people who make it. But here's the thing, right? The rub, right? This creative medium, right, for it to be successful, a part of it is the audience's reaction to it. After all, this is a for-profit industry. Its success is determined by how much it helps the industry to keep going, right? Or basically, is it making enough money so that you can continue to make more comics? And considering what was this character, Vampirella, is essentially a mascot character, right? Who has continued to be developed into various different versions, we can say, well, this is a well loved character. Now, if anyone wants to tell you how you should feel about this character or how you're supposed to view it, those people are people you're not supposed to really listen to, anyways. Big red flag. I say, check it out for yourself. And since it's on Comixology and part of their unlimited account, by the way, this is not sponsored, uh, it doesn't hurt to give it a check out, right? You got 400 some pages sometimes, so there's a lot, but you'll definitely find something you enjoy if you like the horror sci-fi genre, and they're short stories, so it's quick, right? It has your horror stuff, it has your sci-fi stuff, it has that budget horror vibe. If this was an actual movie, that's what it would seem like. But because it's in print, it gives it a sense of, depth. You can take it as deep as, the author wanted you to. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot here to keep you entertained. Um, it's also interesting in the fact that it's a great view in what was considered adult during this time, right? Because again, this wasn't made for kids. This was catering to an adult audience, which means this is what they thought adults thought would be at least appropriate for adults. So it makes it all that much more interesting, see what aged well, what really didn't, but overall, I think it's enjoyable. Now, if you made it this far into the video, I really do thank you. Most people only watch like the first minute or so. I don't know why. Doesn't seem to make a difference if I make it short form or long form, but let's just stick with the reviews for the review's sake. If you did enjoy this, please do the YouTube thing, feed the algorithm, and again, thank you for watching, and I hope you are having a good day or good evening. Ciao, everybody.